So I want to welcome everyone and thank you very much for participating in our kickoff GeoAI Working Group meeting. I'm Marge Cole from the Taylor Geospatial Institute, and this is our initial GeoAI Working Group meeting. We have a number of people online as well, and we have a very tight schedule and a number of speakers. So I am going to try and keep the tight schedule, but anybody that wants to ask questions, for anyone in the room, we have Mike for in the room. Anybody online that wants to ask questions, if you could please put the questions in the chat, and then any of our speakers can just reiterate the question so that everyone can hear it. And then any questions that we don't get to today, we are going to capture. So please, again, put them in the chat, even if you're in the room, or you can send them to info@taylorgeospatial.org. And we will put them in the, we have a Google form set up. We'll put them in the Google forum, and the working group will answer them over time as necessary. So I think, Henning, if you can go to the first slide. So yeah, so TGI has been refining its focus, mission, and vision. Our vision, the new vision, is very similar to the old vision, which is to spark a revolution in geospatial science and technology that will benefit humanity. And the mission is to catalyze collaboration across our consortium. And the key words really in the mission is the catalyzation of collaboration, the consortium, distinctive strengths, collective expertise, shared resources, bringing all of these factors together to advance geospatial capabilities and to have an impact. So that's what TGI's real goal is to bring all of us together, work together, and really make a difference in geospatial advancement. Next slide, please. So we have, over the past few months, had a few big meetings and retreats and conversations and all kinds of things. And what has come out of this is this concept of Taylor Geospatial Institute with the 8 institutions, the capabilities and resources and services and tools from those institutions, but also the squiggly part at the top is the brains, the most important part. So the ideas and the capabilities, but the people themselves from all of our consortium institutions. And that, as we come together and work together, we want to spark the ideas, fueling the work that is already taking place. And there is a lot of work already taking place within our consortium members and our broader partner industry and government and academic institutions. But the idea is to fuel what's already taking place, and then moving towards the impact that, what are the gaps? What are the big questions that need to be addressed? Or what are combining some of these things? What can they do to advance and impact our lives for the better with geospatial capabilities? Next slide. So the things we're working on this year, 2024 focus, is the embedded research scientist program, having embedded research scientists at each institution, plan the food security and digital agriculture challenge. This you'll be hearing more about this. This is it's still a bit in the conceptual phase, but putting together a grand challenge for digital agriculture and food security. So more to come on that soon. And then, of course, the TGI GeoAI Center of Excellence, which the working group is going to be a core part of and feeding into. So those are our focus areas for this year. Next, please, Henning. And again, community first. This is the the real spark and the key to TGI is bringing everybody together, bringing the capabilities, the individual experiences to a shared experience, engaging with our current awardees and future awardees, recruiting consortium members and expertise, piloting these new approaches, and increasing communication, emails, LinkedIn, Twitter, the usual. We're trying to do a much better job on the social aspect and sharing more information about what is happening, not just with TGI, but across the arena, the St. Louis area, and our consortium members and our partner members. And upcoming events, we've got GeoAI Working Group today, yay, the Career Fair, ICAE Career Fair, March 26th, Career Guide Series, 11th, in the Esri Digital Twins Workshop, April 11th, the Cesium Workshop, and an ISI Workshop coming up end of April and May. Yes, yes, please feel free to take photos. So all of those events are on our website also, so you can find them and more. One of the aspects of this working group is to have a webinar, have the working group every other month, which we'll get into later, but then have a webinar on the in-between months, so that those will be on the website also. So there are a lot more events on that you'll be able to find on the website that weren't listed there. Mark is up, not for first inning. So at this point, I'm not going to do long introductions because we do have a tight schedule, but please welcome Mark Munson from NGA, everyone.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everybody. Looking at the slides, looking at the introduction, and thinking how cool it is. It's pretty cool. So also thinking it's pretty niche, right? You know, does anyone else have the problem of trying to explain to like friends and family what the hell we're doing here? Does anyone else have that problem? Like, it's geospatial, it's artificial intelligence, and it's, you know, so it's hard to explain to just sort of people off the street. But for us, we know it's special. For us, we know what the power is. For us, we know what the potential is. For us, we know that I trust that like 10 years from now, the work that we're doing here today in this room will, right, have a profound effect on the world. And while maybe you're like not completely bought in yet, maybe you're thinking, yeah, hopefully, like in my agency, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of politics, there's a lot of, you know, sort of government overhead. But the way we stay motivated and the way we keep each other motivated is to encourage each other by the work that it is that we're doing and what the effect it will have one day. So I know a lot of the stuff that the Institute is working on is new, coming up with new ideas for new programs and new things. Last week we went to the TGI workshop, and you know, they have this big idea for, well, again, it's a fairly complicated thing to explain to people, but we know it will fundamentally change, uplift the entire community. So for that, I say thank you. Thank you guys for doing this work. Thank you for just taking the time on a Wednesday afternoon to get together to partake of this bounty of croissants, cupcakes, and wine. There's wine over there too. I don't know if you guys noticed that, and a couple of beers. So, you know, you got to thank Andy Taylor for that at a minimum. You can tell him that I thanked him for the bounty of croissants and wine. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about national security, geospatial intelligence, AI. So forgive me if I go a little too far on acronyms and things like that. I have folks here that will help maybe challenge me on that to remind me what I'm going to talk about. I know at least half this crowd has some background in this and some understanding of what NGA does. But what I'm going to talk to you today about is sort of the future of we call it GeoInt, right? Geospatial intelligence, but geospatial information, artificial intelligence, the future of GeoAI from the way we look at it. There's been some really cool, interesting things happening in government in the last year. We got an executive order from the White House. You guys might have seen that last fall. The president signed Executive Order 14-110 at the end of October. We have what is touted as the longest national security memo in history that's about to come out here this spring, early this summer. The most pages ever for a national security memo about artificial intelligence that will provide a lot of unclassified guidance. So there'll be lots of things that you can read about it in the open, and then there'll be a big portion of it that's classified. I was just at the White House Monday, meeting with the national security staff, where we really we went over NGA's programs, and then we talked a lot about what we saw, what we should see in this national security memo and guidance coming out. We've had Congress write in the last couple of years of bills, guidance to the community of what we should be doing with AI. One of the things that they mandated was that every agency establish a chief of artificial intelligence officer. And so by default, now I have two titles. I'm the director of the Data and Digital Innovation Directorate at NGA, and I'm also the chief artificial intelligence officer, in which the only way I am qualified is by giving these speeches. So you can expect a couple more of these before my tenure as Chow. They like to call them Chows, Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer Chow. It's not spelled correctly, but close enough. So lots of guidance coming out from the government on what the government should be doing. Part of that's concern of what our adversaries are doing, concern of what the potential of artificial intelligence is. And again, I think the people in this room obviously have been working on it for some time, doing research, building products and services in the area. But I think we all recognize at this point, it's a bit like being when sort of early days of computing, like early days of personal computers, some of the early applications that were being developed for personal computers, there was still a lot of skepticism then about what it is that we're, there was an old adage about like an IBM XT and like Lotus 123 was on it doing accounting, but the accountant could still use the adding machine faster. And they all, see, the accountant is still faster and, than the IBM XT. But the reality is the IBM XT could do like the work of 1,000 accountants in the same time. And there was no way 40 years ago that we could have imagined what the abstraction of computing upon abstraction upon cloud computing, now what we're able to do with data and artificial intelligence is just, there's no way we really could have imagined it, except for in the movies and science fiction novels, which eerily is all coming true today. So, like I said, I know that you guys believe, but let me just lay out what we think will happen in this field. What my agency, what the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency is looking forward to, and what the program of work that we can expect to accomplish over the next 3 to 8 years, something like that. Okay, one of the things that we expect, one of the things that we need, and the things that we're recommending to the rest of government and industry, fundamentally, our computer vision models still aren't very good. They're like, when we try to detect an object from low Earth orbit on like either commercial imagery or national technical means imagery, we're still only getting it right maybe like 3/4 of the time. Positive identification of that object of interest, really good predictive geolocation accuracy, and to do it fast. We're still weak on this. It's still not good. It's great though, when you find something that you did not expect, the computer recommends that, hey, you go look here because of this anomaly. Everyone gives each other high fives. We all praise the system. But as a general rule, we're still kind of in that IBM XT Lotus 123 day of skepticism with our analysts where they're like, this thing is wrong a lot. And if you sort of compare that to large language models today, ChatGPT, Gemini, and some of the, the big models that are out there, you guys know those things are wrong about a quarter of the time as well. You know that. It's fascinating. They're super useful, summarization and creative writing and all these things. But sort of when you just sort of measure the rightness, the correctness, righteousness of these things, they're wrong a lot. They are. And today, humans have to be careful with that, have to recognize when they're wrong and kind of work with it. But that model seems to be accepted more, especially by students at university, than an analyst that's trying to identify objects of interest at speed to make calls to the commander of CENTCOM to say that this Houthi rocket launcher is here and it needs to be eliminated before it launches the rocket and strikes a vessel in the Red Sea. So you kind of understand the sort of trade-off here. We have to make these models better if we're going to make them more useful to the enterprise. The other thing we have to do is expand to new modalities. Today, we mostly do like electrical optical imagery, radar imagery. We're not really expanding these models and this work to other types of modalities. And I won't go into what they are in this forum. There's this new effort to really expand the use of autonomy, autonomous vehicles, and I'll just say it, autonomous weapons in the Department of Defense. Another good reason why our models have to be better than they are, because in some cases, these models will be employed, computer vision models will be employed on autonomous platforms that will be operating, in some cases, on their own accord. Okay, so the next recommendation is to integrate this technology more fruitfully into analytic workflows. In other words, I think we're in the era of human-machine teaming. We get a lot of pressure from sort of pure technologists to say, hey, we really don't think you need as many humans as you have right now. And we're very careful about that. We really think that we need humans right now. We need humans, obviously, to train the models. We need humans to do the test and evaluation of the models. We need humans to give a lot of feedback to the models. We're missing that right now. We have thousands of analysts that look at imagery every day, but we're still not in the phase where those humans are giving a lot of feedback to the models to improve them. That's something we need to do. We need humans to monitor, attend to the models. And then the most important piece is we need humans to kind of make use of the output of these models. That's a big effort that we're still falling short on. We also think that we need to employ these large language models more in our analytic workflow. Most of our focus has been on computer vision models. Most of our focus has been on object detection. We know that industry has already done a really good job with multimodal large language models and large vision models. I don't know if you guys have seen like ChatGPT-4V, the vision. We see Google has done remarkable work with training vision models with the text that's associated with like a YouTube video. And so all of this sort of cross multimodal between vision and language is something that we know is important. We know we have to embrace it. I think that our agency is sitting upon the gold mine of the most amount of imagery in the world, associate it with the most amount of text written by humans with that image, with those images. We're sitting on this gold mine of dual modality models that we still haven't built yet and tried. And I'll say it again. I also think that our analysts will benefit from day one when they start using a large language model to generate reporting. Something that we are looking forward to, but that we will also kind of, the entire enterprise is not ready for that day that an intelligence analyst raises their hand as the first intelligence analyst that has used a large language model to generate an intelligence report that goes like to the White House. So that will be a fun day. I mean, it's probably already happened, but you know, we don't know. No one knows. The other big thing that we're looking forward to is expanding beyond the object classes that we have today. Today, you know, it's mostly like military equipment that we're looking for. You can imagine all of the things that would be interesting to national security in terms of going off and detecting things from energy infrastructure, foundational military intelligence infrastructure, things like find every data center in country X, right? Just super useful sets of object classes that we haven't even begun to tackle yet. Another cool, interesting, I'm sorry, I'm up here flipping these things around because it's printed on two sides, and this is new to me, this two-sided printing. So that we do something called collection orchestration. Our agency has analysts that are experts in telling the collection constellation that the government controls, telling that constellation where to collect for reasons, what's happening, you know, to collect intelligence in a timely manner, to be able to warn or to be able to create insight. And we're not using artificial intelligence to do that today. It's complicated, right? We're talking about pretty sophisticated network constellation of satellites, especially if you throw in commercial and all of those extra satellites, to be able to model that constellation for just the physics of what it takes to, you know, what can be done, what can be collected from the orbitology and what have you. But then to throw in all of the sort of human-generated data that would help predict what should be collected, like years and years of collection records, things we've collected and the reasons why we've collected imagery there. Things like just open source reporting on events, things that are happening today, things that are happening right now that maybe someone is tweeting about on social media that would help build a model to predict and or recommend how you should change the satellite collection parameters. Make sense? Something we're looking forward to the future to do more of that. So if you guys have any cool ideas there, we're interested. Another big recommendation the agency is making to the community is that we need a good common machine learning ops environment for everyone to operate on. We need to have a ton of GPUs to do a ton of things, train models and run inference. We'd love to have common tooling of things like data labeling. Love to have common ontology, right? Definitions of things in the world of objects. It's really a struggle amongst the bureaucratic agencies to try to do anything common like that. And the only way that we're gonna win this war is to develop some of these common platforms, common tooling, common vocabularies. So we look forward to that. And then the last recommendation is one that I think we're doing an okay job of being out ahead, and that's to do some governance. The government loves to use the word governance for obvious reasons. But you know, getting back to the ontology thing, right? To say to the community, to lead the community, and to say we need a common vocabulary. We need to all use to call things the same. We need good AI assurance tenants. We need good responsible AI tenants. We need everyone to agree upon what we're doing, why we're doing it, where the line is, so that we're all safe. We practice good AI safety and responsible AI. So those kinds of things, our agency is a little bit out ahead on, because we did stand up this Data and Digital Innovation Directorate a couple of years ago, and have established some leadership in the area, have been working with the other agencies to provide some guidance and provide guidance inside. So while that's not like very sexy, and it's not very, it's not like getting like a 100,000 GPUs, that's pretty cool. To walk in and say, hey, I lead the AI governance, everyone's like, boo, nobody needs you. But we do, we need it. It's obvious in the world that I live in, the world that some of you live in, when we're trying to use this technology for national security, we follow the law of armed conflict. We follow all of the executive orders. There's tons of guidance on how to conduct warfare. And so you can imagine the risks, the very high risks of employing this technology in public and national safety. So something we do take very seriously, and we pledge to do it right. So those are some big ideas. Those are some big things that we have to do moving forward. I think a lot of those match up with any sort of industry, any company that's trying to employ this technology to do their particular domain of business. I do believe this technology will be applied to every business. I had a chance to go visit all of the AI companies, all of the big AI companies recently: Microsoft, Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, and some others. And Microsoft, you see it coming. It's about to happen. The OpenAI, the agreement they have with OpenAI, ChatGPT, it's going to be embedded in every product they have. Every product they have will have some element of that OpenAI technology in it. And so there will be a day when you subscribe. Maybe you've seen it today. I'm not sure. I know a lot of people, coders, are using Copilot, they call it, but this Copilot will be like in Word, Office 365. And one day when you update your Office 365, probably for a small fee, right, it's going to be recommending things for you as you type about what it is that you're typing, either based on whatever, going through your Outlook mailbox or all the other documents you have, or whatever. So you will be using it on a day-to-day basis, if you're not already, in the very near future. Unless you're a Luddite like me and refuse to use any of this. No, that's a joke. That said, I look forward to this working group, look forward to the panel, and look forward to hearing from you about what it is that we're trying to do and how you can help. Thanks. We got questions?
Yep, we have
Okay.
time for questions, and Henning.
We don't have very much time for questions. I'll do it. I timed that perfectly, I think.
You're going to read some online questions?
I have some questions, Mark. Like you said, analysts are upset that it's only 75% right. What percent right do you want?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Willie. It's very difficult to say. I mean, I've seen it. I've used the anecdotes. You have an AI developer that we had some feedback where we were looking at like tanks in a tree line, lined up trying to hide themselves in the tree line, and a row of tanks, and it was like detect, miss, detect, miss, just a row, just a line of tanks. And it got like 75% of the tanks, it detected 75% of the tanks. The other 25% it didn't. And so an analyst is like, this is awful. Why? I mean, it's so obvious they're in a line. It's so easy for me to understand that these are all the same thing in the line. Why, if there's anything that the computer should be able to do, it should be able to do this. And the AI developer was just elated. that it was able to detect these tanks that were trying to obscure themselves in this tree line. Not the tanks themselves, but people driving them. And it just goes to show you the sort of mindset. And so the adoption of this technology is going to be based on a new paradigm of work, a new paradigm of thinking. The adoption of this technology is probably going to lie in the area of better models. That's one, but then of course better geospatial analytics. And this group here would absolutely agree with that. But you can apply analytics and say, hey, if you see a line of 50 tanks, and maybe some of them are like other objects or something like that, let's just go ahead and do an analytic that says they're all tanks. That's probably not a good analytic. I just made that up on the spot, but you can imagine all of the kinds of functions, statistical analysis, machine learning, right? All of the things that we can do on top of the computer vision output that will help analysts adopt technology and the workflow. But today, a lot of them just think that, why are you making me do more work? Why are you making me help this thing that potentially wants to put me out of a job? It's a bit fanciful to think that, but we need them to help us in this adoption. Yeah, good question.
I'm going to ask one of the questions from the Zoom chat. A very straightforward question from Mike Little. Can you share any comments about dual use?
So dual use between civilian and military, that's a term that we use sometimes? Is that what is meant by that question?
Let's assume so.
Okay. Look, there's tons of dual use. I love the project that we threw up there on food security. So NGA is responsible for providing services to the Department of Defense and the intelligence community, advising the president, commanders on what's happening in the world and why. Obviously, one of the things that helps protect national security are things like food security. So if you're working in a country in Africa that is experiencing a food security crisis, obviously that is destabilizing and potentially a threat to either the countries around it or threats to our allies or our own national security. So using remote sensing and using machine learning in remote sensing to be able to understand the situation of that food security crisis is extremely valuable to national security. So I will say that 2/3, probably what we do in NGA would be applicable in some dual use fashion to the civilian world. Made that number up. Seems reasonable. You think, Ryan? 2/3, half? It's just that we can't tell you about.
Yeah, it's very fascinating to hear all the identified challenges. I almost wonder if you see a path of using multi-modality model to compensate for the single modality challenges in terms of the incorrections. And so we can better leverage all the data, and especially contextual information from different data sources.
I think so. We're really big. We really
Okay.
see it as the future. And the reality is we are just at the beginning of that. I think it's really going to, in the next 5 years, explode.
The example you showed makes me remind, like when we try to embed simple physics model, the logics into the computer vision, any other multimodal, we're creating a sort of a verse. It's not a multiverse, but it's a verse that explains, try to digitalize or digital twin of the real world. So make sense of the limited data we have witnesses.
Yeah. And we see multimodal, like today I talked about sort of language and imagery sort of together. It's really, so there's that kind of multimodal. But in reality, it's sort of infinite. It's infinite what I think some point in the future, and I think it's in the short future, I think it's in the next 10 years, that these large language models will not really be about language, okay? They won't be about summarizing text or writing reports and things like that. They will be agents of work. They will be tapping into APIs, data sets. They will be writing code temporarily to do ETL transformations, to get new results. These things will be doing work at a scale and sophistication that we haven't even really kind of comprehended yet. That's when it's going to get scary.
Hi. Maybe a dumb question, but as far as the 25% error rate, how much of that is, do you think, improving the image, and or just improving the model, or both?
So one of the things I want to make sure of, I'm generalizing when I say that, right? Obviously, some models are way, way, way better than that. Some are worse than that. It's a generalization. And in no way does it depict our current capabilities. But it's a generalization, I think, for the world, for satellite computer vision imagery. It will drive changes to the sensor, right? It will drive changes to the demand for compute. It will change the way how much and the way we store data and imagery. So this need to make those better will drive change and hopefully improvements to the entire cycle from collection to compute, right, to inference. And so that cycle is a little bit slower with satellites. You know, no offense to Planet. I think companies like Planet will build satellites a lot faster, design them and deploy them a lot sooner than maybe the national government. But that feedback loop to tie, you know, a AI model developer tied back to what is needed in the sensor itself, I think that's going to get tighter and tighter. And you will see that evolution become faster and faster. So one of the most obvious things is like to have higher resolution imagery. The better the picture, right? Because when Google trains a model on how to detect a cat, typically that cat takes up, is on a high resolution smartphone photo, the cat takes up almost the entire image. And it's, you know, a very high resolution of image of a cat. Google can get cats right like 99.999% of the time. So you can imagine that it would drive a higher resolution imagery if we want to get the object detections more and more. But that, again, that cycle, the bandwidth it takes to do that, the amount of compute it would take to do that on the sensor, and what it would take to get that data to inference somewhere, it obviously will drive more compute into space, more compute on the sensor, more compute, more networking into space and where the sensors are. That'll all be driven by this desire.
Sure. Reporting in from the chat. So there's quite a vibrant discussion on the chat about the accuracy issues. So I'll have a report a comment and then a question.
Yep.
Robert Cardillo says he stands behind no one in his admiration for you, but he thinks you're understating CV's accuracy. ImageNet showed CV CNN tools exceeding human interpretation in a number of categories, but he'd still submit there is way more imagery that humans can look at than humans can look at. We must find a way to leverage CV as a filter, as a detector, as an alert.
Robert's right. Scale is the win right here. We win with scale, right? We won't have enough humans to cover all of the images that we take and all the observations that we make. This technology employed properly wins on scale. We have models that are 98% accurate of airplanes on tarmacs. I can do that. I can do that today. I can go get a YOLO model, get 1 million free labels of aircraft, and I could sell that to, you know, but that's not what we're after. I mean, it's good, but we're after the hard stuff. Robert, tell him that.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Here's a little.
Oh, good. We're champagne.
No, but this line is there. Thank you very much. What's that?
Is it less than $25?
It is less than $25. So thank you very much for that. And actually identifying, you know, a number of the things that we want to, focus on here. You should always keep that in your car, for the Frisbee, and it can also act as a dog, water bowl, so. So anyway, yeah, and to the question about dual use, this is actually one of the areas that we're interested in TGI, and the working group itself is actually multi-use. What advancements can we make as a collective that have an impact on cross domains, many different domains, different institutions, different uses. So our next speaker is Josh Delmonico from USGS, the FGDC. He is remote, so we will see him up here, Henning.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for allowing me to be a part of this. For however much Mark just claimed he was not an AI expert, and then proceeded to talk a lot about AI things that I didn't understand. I am definitely not an AI expert, but I've been around the geospatial space for about 25 years and have a lot of experience there, and some ideas I thought like to share with the group that will hopefully further the discussion and just give you some different things to think about and consider as the working group moves forward. So thanks for having me, and next slide. I want to start out with a vision. I've been thinking about this thing we call the National Spatial Data Infrastructure for almost every day for at least the last 2 years. And as I look forward about 10 years, I think these are some of the things that we might see in the National Spatial Data Infrastructure. So ubiquitous data integration, AI-driven analysis, immersive visualization and interaction. I think self-updating or developing maps is gonna be a place for us to look. Digital twins, we're obviously gonna see a lot of changes in the human-machine interface. We're seeing that as things like people embed chips in their arms and look at contact lenses and things like that support AI. I think AR and VR. So we'll see a lot of changes there, and then really global interoperability and data sharing. So a lot of AI underpins this. So I thought I'd sort of start there. Next slide. I find myself asking this question, food for thought. I think sometimes the geospatial community can, spend a long time saying we're different than all of the rest of data or compute capabilities, and I see that same thing happening in GeoAI, and I want to just challenge that notion and ask the question as to whether that's beneficial to us to be continue that paradigm of we're a different AI. Our tendency is to put the word geo in front of everything and call it our own unique thing, and is that harmful or good for us? And it certainly is an application of artificial intelligence. So just wanted to throw that out for the group to think a little bit about. Next slide. So I think our responsibility as geospatial professionals is to unlock the value in our data. I think we have, wisdom, time, money, lives, and productivity stuck in our data that we can't possibly unlock without rethinking the way that we work and leveraging, as I think Mark mentioned, you know, scale is gonna help us with this. How do we unlock that capability, leveraging artificial intelligence? Next slide. So when I think about scale, something I think that really strikes me is a lot of there's about 675,000 people employed as geospatial professionals, and there are about 8 billion people on the planet. So when you think of, you know, I think that begs the question to me, where should we be focused on our applications of geospatial, and who are the customers we're really looking to serve as we look at this artificial intelligence problem? Next slide. So I think it's incumbent upon us to get out of the way, not be a barrier between the use of our data and the 8 billion people on the planet that can put it to use every day. Next slide. And I think that begs the question, you know, who are the users? Are they geospatial professionals? Are they decision makers? Are they the general population, or you know, the elusive public? Next slide. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about some thinking I've done around each of these kind of personas or ideas. But for the geospatial professional, some of the places I think AI can make a difference that I don't hear a lot of people talking about is, you know, what's the interface between users and the geospatial professional. Oftentimes people have to come to us to ask us questions, or they have to go to a specialized application to get the answer. And how can we use artificial intelligence to help break down that barrier between ourselves, or make that interface easier? I think in the geospatial world, you know, there's a lot of room for what's the best available data, what's the best roads data. Find me this data and download the most recent and authoritative data for. I think, Mark, you touched on this, but this pull or push question, right? Right now, a lot of this is we're asking a question and getting a response, but can I go out and say, you know, keep my map data updated for this area, and I always know I've got the most recent information about an area or an event. Then there are obvious, you know, geospatial applications that we've all been talking about for a long time, in, you know, image recognition, feature or object detection, feature extraction, data development, you know, moving forward in a lot of the kind of traditional uses of AI in geospatial. Next slide. I think when you look at a decision maker, you know, for a long time, you know, we think giving somebody a thumb drive and a software license is success in an emergency, or, you know, some other situation. And I think we need to think about the work we're asking them to do when they're under a tremendous amount of stress and pressure to react in a short period of time. So, you know, can we enable a first responder in their truck on the way to an event to say, what do I need to know now? Or where can I have the most impact? And that may or may not involve a map, but it might be heavily informed by geospatial analytics. I'm a policymaker. What's the impact of this policy on, you know, X? So some, again, geospatially informed, or, you know, I want to understand the impacts of, you know, weather on the crops, but I don't want to dig into the analytics or interface with somebody, you know, heavily at the front end. I want to understand what I need to know as fast as I can. So give them the answer they want, and the ability to understand what's behind that answer, because oftentimes you want to interrogate the answer and you want to understand what was the criteria used to come up with it, and can I modify that criteria and ask that question again, and then what data was that based on? Next slide. And then I think there are applications, you know, for the general public, right? My roads are flooded. How can I get to work? Is my house at risk of wildfires? What do I need to do to protect it? Where can I go to get those supplies? Who's got the best prices on that, or who has that stuff in stock? And not that you want to do a Google search. I just want it to tell me, you know, the Lowe's 2 miles down the road's got 4 sheets of those, and you can get there in 5 minutes if you leave now, and they close in 3 minutes. Or sorry, not 3, but 30 minutes. And what improvements do I need to do to my house in the next 10 years? And that could be based on climate, weather, the condition of your roof from imagery, other things like that. Next slide. E.O. Wilson said it really well. We're drowning in information while starving for wisdom, and the world henceforth will be run by synthesizers, people able to put together the right information at the right time, think critically about it, and make important choices wisely. And I think that's really what we all see as the promise of artificial intelligence, is helping us derive wisdom from the tremendous amount of information being thrown at us every day. Next slide. I think we also sometimes have a workflow problem. We're as geospatial professionals off in the corner, sometimes building specialized tools and applications, or publishing data catalogs or portals, and saying, come over here and look at the success, and look at all the answers I can give you. And the decision makers are over on the other side of the room, working in stressful conditions with limited time and high stakes. And in those conditions, they're going to focus on what's familiar to them, the workflows that they know, the people that they trust to answer those. And I think we got to think about how to get over that wall and into the decision cycle without asking people to significantly modify how they operate every day and use tools they're not familiar with. Next slide. So in terms of kind of what I see from my perspective as challenges are, how do we deliver knowledge and intelligence, and not just data catalogs and information? We have to break down the barriers and get out of the way to using our data. We can't expect users to come to us. We have to meet them where they are. So that's been our model for about 30 years. How do we provide knowledge at the point of need, or where the users are? And some examples of that might be in their internet browsers via Siri or Alexa, or in mobile devices. How do we integrate geospatial data into large language models? A lot of that work, I've seen pieces of that work. You might see some of that today from Sam, but some of those large language model work, geospatially informed, not geospatially focused. That kind of pull versus push issue, AI working on my behalf without a nudge. I think we talked about it a little bit, but transparency in algorithms, confidence ratings, an AI user interface where they can adjust and understand the criteria and access the data behind answers. And then I think, as a community, we need to think about a roadmap to get us here. We are have so much to do that we can't afford to be duplicating effort across the board. We need to be focused together to achieve the vision that we all see. So that's what I've got. Next slide. Happy to take any questions if you have any.
Check. Who's got a question?
Okay, good.
Anything online, Michael? Okay. Oh, here, hold on.
Hey Josh, thanks for the information. There's a lot of very good AI ideas. If you don't mind, I took some screenshots and pictures and screenshots, and it's kind of aligns with a lot of the work our org has been doing with kind of specialized large language model that's supporting a chatbot kind of application. Do you see that something you would welcome to see? Thinking about you're going to have a chatbot that is experts in public disaster response. Like the first responder can get immediate information from that chatbot that trend on specific policies and best practices in the space. Can you shed light on that?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely welcome to take pictures of my briefing, and I think chatbots are, offer a lot of or a portion of the capability I discussed. I think it would be interesting to think about personalized chatbots. So let me make that chatbot mine, and how do I tailor it and customize it. But I think that gets at that idea of having an advocate on your behalf, not needing to be directed every minute.
Okay, so next, we have a panel. Abby Stiliano is our moderator, and Samantha Rundle from USGS, and Mike McDowell from Planet. Unfortunately, Mike Fernando from Scale AI couldn't make it today, but hopefully we'll have him at a future meeting. So you're welcome to take a seat there. There's some water on the table there. Abby, you can use this, or yeah, that works.
Sure. All righty. Nice to meet you. Nice to see everyone. So I'm Abby Stiliano. I am faculty at St. Louis University and a fellow of the Taylor Geospatial Institute. I think that's mostly why I'm here. I guess my research area is in sort of core computer vision, thinking about global scale image search and explainable image search, but a lot about image search, and then sort of more general applications of AI. So that's me, but I'm not the person you're here for. I'm going to be just sort of guiding the conversation today. So what we're going to start with is just introductions. And as sort of a means of introducing yourselves, if you could tell us who you are and what you do at your different organizations, then also talk to us a little bit about sort of the current state and focus of geospatial AI in your organization. Very university focused. We're going to be forward looking and other questions. So here, really thinking about what is the state today? What is your organization doing with geospatial AI currently? Do we need another? Do I need to pass the microphone? Okay.
Can you hear me?
You
can. Okay. There you go. All right, I'm Sam Arundel, or you can call me Samantha Arundel. It doesn't matter. It's a crazy name. I am a research scientist with the U.S. Geological Survey, so I will make it a point to kind of stay away from stuff that Josh has already presented, or maybe add to it. I'm also the acting director of the Center of Excellence for Geospatial Information Science. We are the only science dedicated branch of core science systems, which is one of the USGS mission areas. Our group has been together for about 20 years, and we have been looking at some bigger visions for quite some time, and are really excited about where we're going right now. I'll go ahead. Do we want to do introductions, all the introductions, and I'll go back to
Whichever you would prefer.
All right.
Sure, that sounds very natural.
okay.
Cool. I am Mike Merritt. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Planet. For those of you that don't know Planet, we operate one of the largest satellite fleets for remote sensing and Earth observation in the world. Actually, today, most of our customers come from kind of a few categories. So defensive intelligence, one of our customers is over there. And then agriculture, so Bayer down the road. Civil government is another very big one. And then education and research. And we're partnered with Taylor Geospatial Institute. So glad to have you guys as customers.
All right, so let's talk about sort of the current state of how you're using geospatial AI at USGS and at Planet. Well, what are you using right now?
Okay, right now, so USGS mission is Science for a Changing World. That's a simple mission. It sounds simple anyway. So all of our AI work will be related to advancing that mission. What kinds of things we're doing, I will give you some examples. We've been working probably for 10 years with your CNNs, convolutional neural networks to say, classify land use cover. We work with RNNs, recurrent neural networks, to look at change over time of, say, hydrological systems. We use GANs, generative adversarial networks, to create synthetic training data. The USG itself has been a little hesitant about using ChatGPT, for example, or any of the chats. The main reason is because our mission is to provide science for a changing world. We really gold stamp, that's the term we like to use, our data and our results. Our results might be used to drive policy, to drive changes, and can have a very large impact. So on the end of large language model, so most of our work has really been color vision. On the end of large language models, that is where we are wanting to move, especially in CGIS. CGIS's vision is the Intelligent National Map. So you may have heard of the national map, and where CGIS has been going with that, working on ontology, working on automated feature extractions, hydrological systems generalization, is to get to a point where we can have a chat where you can ask and get answers to complex spatial questions. And similar to what Josh said, we want to answer questions like, you know, if there's 5 inches of rain overnight in Houston, what hospitals might be flooded, and where would we want to move patients instead? So these kinds of questions that you can ask a chatbot, this is where we're heading, and CGIS has been really spearheading this work. We just released or announced our first kind of stab at an intelligent national map that is able to answer questions like this. And I'll stop there because I'm sure we'll talk more about some of that later.
Yeah. At Planet, so right now, I would say AI is kind of in its adolescent phase right now. So our customers come to us with a problem, right? And it's always really the same problem, just different versions of it. And it's around broad area management, right? So they're coming in, they're saying, okay, right now I have to make this choice, right? Like I'm managing a whole state or a whole country or a county or whatever it might be, or you know, these fields, agricultural fields globally, right? And I have to make this kind of Sophie's choice, right? I can look at one area, very detailed, you know, frequently, you know, maybe a little bit expensive. I can get a lot of that detail there, but I can't look at everything. If I want to look at everything, I'm going to look at data that's old, right? Or, you know, it's so much data. If I get it daily, which, you know, Planet does have a daily scan of the Earth, right? It's like, there's so much data. There's no way, there's not enough eyes in the world to look at that data. And so when I first came in, like we tried to measure customer value, and we started by looking at like, well, how much data are they downloading, right? And it was so interesting how fast that flipped to say, okay, it has nothing, like the amount they download actually is an inverse correlation to value, because there's just more data than they can do anything. So what we see now is we're seeing these real success stories, and maybe I'll get a chance to talk more deeply about one of them later, but civil government, right, where they're using change detection to monitor an entire country, right? Defense and intelligence, right? Looking at marine domain awareness, right? Monitoring ships in, you know, the entire ocean, right? Areas that just were never monitored before, or really, like, if they were monitored, like from a data standpoint, they weren't being monitored with eyes. So we see that now. I would say it's a subset of our customers, and it's just like that upper quartile, right? But it's so clear to me, like seeing those customers, the difference between them and everybody else that's still doing it, you know, with manually with analysts, is just like it's a complete reinvention of what we're doing. And I think this is the year for AI. Actually, this is the year that we're really seeing breakthrough and go mainstream.
I think we'd actually love to hear the sort of concrete use case, the success story. So we're going to talk a little more about sort of how we can use AI to get better information out of the data that you have. But this is a great opportunity to have that discussion.
Yeah. You want to hear it?
Yes.
Cool. All right.
Let's hear it.
I've got a couple. I'll pick one that's more on the civil government side. So Brazil, for example. Brazil came to us, and obviously they've got the Amazon. Most of the Amazon is in Brazil. It's the lungs of our planet, but it's also just this vast wilderness that is frankly, it is their national treasure as well, of resources, of you know, biodiversity, and sustainability for their population. And they were having this same issue, right? Like, how do you monitor the entire Amazon, right? You can do it with a plane, but how often can you put a plane across the entire area? That's just not feasible. You could do it with satellite imagery, which you can do that maybe monthly, but like, okay, then who's going to try and find all the changes and what's happening? And what was happening is, you know, they were basically reporting the news, right? By the time they've ever find out about any change, like illegal deforestation or like a gold mine in the middle of, like right by the, you know, the rivers, you know, polluting the rivers and things like that. By the time they found out about it, it was too late. The resources were gone. It was already polluted, you know, and just try and restore that is like virtually impossible. So we started working with them, and we have this kind of civil government maturity model that we took them through, which is like, okay, you start with this, your GIS experts, and you're going to look at things monthly or so with like a base map. So you have maybe 10 or 15 people looking at it, right? And then one of our partners we teamed up with to build this portal, and the portal has change detection, and it is integrated also with their local land use data. And so you can go in and say, okay, show me all the deforestation in the area I care about, the before and after, and the stuff that's in violation of, likely violation of the law. Show me the new mines, show me new roads, show me airstrips where that drug traffickers might use, show me ships. And we saw the number of people using it on a weekly basis go up to 30,000. So it's 30,000 people. And like, I can tell you for sure, those are not specially trained people that know GIS and remote sensing and are analyzing these images. They see the change in the area that they care about. They look at it with their own eyeballs, and they can actually accept a recommendation, hit a button, it submits it to a judge, and that judge will grant them authorization of action. And so they'll drop in, blow up these like huge, you know, logging machines and things like that. They'll dynamite them or confiscate all these assets. They actually like had $1.9 billion in year 2 of the program that they confiscated or fines that Brazil was able to reap. And then, sorry, I get really excited about this. Then last year, deforestation in the Amazon, the illegal deforestation went down by 20%. And that's because they have the data to make the decisions to actually enforce the laws, right? So that's what excites me. I think that's where we are with AI, but it's also the future, right? That it's like indicative of all these other industries should be following that same path.
It's an incredible story to be able to share. I think for folks that are sort of part of this working group, one of the things that is useful to understand is sort of how does that development, so you talked about the change detection model that's built into this. Is Planet developing those sorts of things internally? Is that the sort of thing that you're working with partners in academia or elsewhere to develop models like that?
Yeah, it's way too expensive for us to develop it all internally. We are heavily reliant on partners, but also on the research community and then our customers. So in this case, we have some base models of like change detection, like roads, buildings, ships and things like that. Then the partner on top built a specific algorithm for deforestation based on that region and things like that. And so the partner augmented it. In other cases like defense and intelligence, we have partners like SynMax that are working on marine domain awareness. So they're detecting ships and dark ships and things like that. So we started doing some of it, like the building blocks on our own, and then we're focused on partners and our customers to drive that much faster.
All right, so this is a good pivot to generally think about sort of the opportunities and where this work group can plug in. So what do you view in your organizations is the sort of big opportunities looking forward in terms of GeoAI, and sort of what are you currently lacking? Where are there gaps? So we'll start thinking about this with respect to USGS, and then we can pivot back to Planet.
Okay. So there's some really specific gaps, and then broader gaps. So broader gaps, areas that it would be great to have others involved is moving towards this ability to take the natural language text and be able to generate the map from it. And that's where so we're delving into this, but we're still in just the beginning process. And people ask really complex questions, and people are really able to answer complex questions. And we have seen, this huge growth in being able to answer geospatial questions, but it's still pulling together the large language models and the color vision. So the same challenges NGA was talking about. How do we pull those together? So one of my favorite queries I've been asking the internet for 20 years, I'm from Flagstaff, Arizona originally. There's a big mountain there. If you've ever been to Flag, big, beautiful mountain that we love, San Francisco Mountain. And I've been asking Google for 20 years, show me hiking trails below 9,000 feet on the south side of the mountain near a stream. And I've watched the progression over 20 years, and this year, ChatGPT can answer that. And even just in the last 6 months, ChatGPT can answer that when it couldn't before. I still don't have my map though. And then if the answer comes from the USGS, and so we're talking challenges here, right? Our biggest challenge is how do we ensure that the answer that we're giving is accurate, ethical, hold up in court. These are our biggest issues. Our answers have to hold up in court. So understanding what are ways that we can ensure trust in our answers is a big, I really think that'll be our biggest challenge as an agency moving forward. Answers are there. How do we know if they're right?
Yeah, I think that is definitely one of those pieces for us. Our customers talk a lot about validation models, for example. Like, okay, like, because it's great in a demo, like it all looks fantastic and we're really excited, but like you gotta have the clear expectations of what the outcome actually is really going to look like, so that you can build workflows and things like that around that. So I think that's one piece. I would say the funniest one though is first gap, and it's both a little bit at Planet, but not so much anymore, but at our customers right now is just the automation mindset. Like there's still so much like where we start, we were thinking about our data. Well, okay, like people are like downloading this and they can tell that this little scene is, there's a misalignment in the scene and they can deal with that or whatever, but it's like, no, there's no people anymore. It's just, it's all automated, right? And so our focus on data quality, consistency has been really, really a big focus. And I think our customers and our partners need to kind of make that shift to really just say, okay, look, it's not about like onesie twosie thing. This is, you gotta be able to set it and have it self-optimize over time. So that's one. And then, but the one thing I would say to this audience here, like our single biggest gap in the industry is around solutions, right? It's one thing to build an AI model, but what's an AI solution to a real world problem? That is like that next step that we need to get to, because models are not enough, right? There needs to be a more complete solution wrapped around that makes business sense and drives real value and adoption.
And if I can add to that, I think that really leads to the research to operations challenge. How what looks good in research may not always look good in operations, and how we bridge that gap. And that's always been a challenge for us. I think it's a more pressing need to understand how we take that model and we apply it to the real world. Partly because that model could be applied in a way that we don't want. And that can be profoundly impactful. So we want to be sure that we understand that process.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have the Zoom screen behind us, and I see chat questions that are popping up, and I unfortunately can only see, I think, the first small bit of those. We'll get to some of the questions later, but there was one that popped up just now that talked a little bit about training, and that was where I stopped being able to see what it is, but it's a nice transition. So if I don't get to the question, we'll get back to it when we come to the audience questions. But I do think we haven't really talked about sort of training processes. We've been thinking a lot about, how do we use models that exist and how do we sort of plug those into our business pipelines. But I think there's this question for, oh, now we have a full question. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap up my thought here rather than pivoting. What are sort of the unique challenges in your domain if you're thinking about the training of these generative AI models, or really any AI model? They get equated right now, right? A generative AI and AI, sort of everybody thinks of those as the same thing. But it would be useful to know sort of what is unique about your domain and the data that you have and the challenges that presents for training these sorts of AI models.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I don't think that was the question.
You don't get what I apologize. I really only caught the first few words.
Our biggest challenge, USGS, is training data, having particularly labeled good, lots of good labeled data for any kind of supervised learning. For creating foundation models, we are extremely limited by good data. We have lots of data, and I shouldn't say good data, good for training. But we still need tools to take the massive amounts of satellite imagery, the massive amounts of elevation, right? We create elevation and hydrography data. How do we take those data and turn them into what we need to generate models?
Sorry, she was asking about pulling out the chat. We'll get back to this in a second. Let's finish this conversation.
Because I want to answer that.
Yeah, we will follow up with that one as the next question.
Yeah, on our side, it's kind of the opposite problem. Ground truth data for us is actually really important. It's not something that we have, right? So we're relying on others for that to truly train some of these more precise models, especially on the agriculture side. So I think that's one. The other thing that we've kind of struggled with is the diversity of use cases that we get approached with. There's a lot of problems that need to be solved. And so prioritizing which of those that we train and then make sure those models are really trained well so that we can actually go right into production and, again, not stuck in like demo state. So.
Right. So not just having the data or training the model, but training the model to think, to analyze geospatial questions, and provide those answers, which we're still not able to do that in many cases.
Yeah, not quite.
Not quite.
All right, so let's go ahead and pull our chat up, and we'll turn this more into a dialogue. So got a question in the chat that we haven't talked about training and educating the workforce. So my question was about training the models. what steps should we take to ensure that your workforce in each of your domains, which are different, is prepared to be working sort of in GeoAI, but in your domain?
I think there are some general ideas that can work across agencies and types of agencies. And there has been an effort through the UN's AI for Good to develop some curricula. I mean, lots of people are working on curricula, right? But some ideas related to, do we need different kinds of paths for different kinds of entities? And this comes back to sort of what Josh was hitting on, where we need to be able to answer that for the experts, for the geospatial experts. But we also needed a path, maybe a learning path for the users of that data directly. And then we need a path for the deciders. So the people who actually make the decision. And I think it's a different path for each one of those. The decider's is going to want information generalized in a different way. But they'll still need to understand some of the basics of AI and how we trust the data, how we got to the output. So I think that's one way to approach it. If we're talking about, our employees, people who can come work for us, that's going to be on that more geospatial expert side. And I really fall back to, the GIS revolution, right? Where we were looking at the same kinds of challenges where there's computers, there's people who are experts in computers, there are people who are experts in the spatial realm. How do we bring them together? And I think that training is even more important now, of the cross-disciplinary training. And then the field moves so quickly. I think that's an issue that we're going to have to understand, related to, say, a 4-year traditional college degree. By the time, these kids come in, and by the end of their first year, there are big changes. So we'll have to address those issues in a way we never have in the past. I think, bringing together all of these smart people and talking about these issues is a good way to go about this.
As a professor, that rapid pace of change is a nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah, get used to it. That's like, I was just talking to one of our customers to Bayer today, and it's like, Planet's in a constant state of change because it's like, you have to innovate. I mean, because the market is changing so dramatically, and it's exciting, but it can be exhausting. I definitely agree with you, by the way, on the 3 tracks. I love that framework. I do think it's like a classic kind of product development issue where like the collaboration between the 3 is really important too. Like having them understand each other's needs is really important. At Planet, we also like kind of looked ahead a little bit on this and just knew that education was going to be a big priority for us in order for our customers to succeed. So we built a customer success team full of experts, and then we built an education team and an online kind of training. Planet University is, so we're using those as vehicles to try and speed the change.
All right, so I'm not seeing any questions coming in just yet on the chat. Do we have questions around the room? One in the back. Am I running a microphone also?
My question is a little bit around sort of measuring data quality. And I wonder, my sense of it, it would be that you've got whatever your data quality is, and then you have your model, and some interplay between those is going to tell you whether you can have your successful outcome or not, right? That's at least my perspective. It's probably an oversimplification, but I wonder, do you have sort of a standardized measurement or practice for looking at your data set and saying it'll work or it can't based on sort of some model we built, just to look at the data and say, is it good enough or not?
Yeah, we do. I'm not the AI expert specifically, but consistency for us is the biggest thing, right? So we look at consistency from data from one day to the next, because that's what really throws off the models. And then, but within like accuracy, we can pretty quickly see If we're trying to detect something like, okay, hey, I want to see cars, for example, we've got a very low chance of that versus ships or trucks, right? And it's just pixel size, honestly, and the size of the object for us. But consistency is the key. That's what leads to success over time at scale.
And I like the point, the nicely simplified idea that we would know the accuracy of a national data set, which we can do. That doesn't necessarily tell us a lot about what the accuracy is at the location in which you're working. So that's, one national data set, and then you take all, a bunch of data sets for which it's really hard to determine the accuracy. Again, this is an old GIS problem that we still really don't have a good solution to, which is determining accuracy of an individual data set and then putting them together. How we determine what the accuracy of the overall data set. And then we're talking about a model, right, on top of those data. And in theory, all of this should be really easy to do. We should be able to say, here's our answer, and these were the data sets our answer was based on. This is the average accuracy or whatever kind of metric you want to use to report an accuracy. And then you could also map out, here are areas that have higher accuracy, so we could have, but this has never been done. We've talked about this in GIS for 30 years, and we still don't do this. But I think that we do need to probably have more effort in the AI realm because it's so distrusted to develop these kinds of workflows for our results. And then, yeah, we can look at results. If you've worked with any, say deep learning, what you'll find is your results often look really good, the numbers at least, so we can report those numbers. But then when you actually go and look at the data, you think, what is going on here? And how did I even get these accuracy results when if I actually look at the output, it doesn't make any sense. And the number of times that, you want to hit the computer and say, isn't that obvious to you? It's, it's totally obvious to me. So in the geospatial realm, I think that is a big challenge for us, is to understand how we can report these metrics in the best way visually for the non-trusting public, if that's your, client to use.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we have an eager participant in the room. Mark, are you wanting to give your perspective on the quality assessment, or did you have a question?
Question.
Okay, it would also be useful to hear the NGA perspective on some of the quality.
Yeah. No, this is more important because this is work I have to accomplish and I want to ask you guys. Is there anything from a national perspective, United States of America perspective, that you would like to see investment, policy, anything from that we can do as a country that would help you plan it? I know what that is, but that would help us get to where we need to go.
You want to start since you already know your answer?
Yeah, a bigger contract for sure, but no. Truly though, I do think standards, particularly from a government standpoint, like we're in the Wild West here, right? Commercial data providers, we're bringing AI to you. What are the standards, right? I think that's a big one. I also think the labeling piece that you were talking about is another one. Everybody's recreating that again and again and again, and like that's something we can absolutely simplify and leverage.
So I have to just say one thing, because I could make a whole list. I agree with standardization, which terminology standardization is part of that. I'd love to see more investment in moving the ontological frameworks forward as for a long time, we thought we needed ontologies to be able to do what ChatGPT can do now. What we really need, and so, you know, stepping back from that and saying we don't really need ontological frameworks to answer questions, but I think we need them to determine the trust in those answers. I think the ontology can help direct the domain and make sure that answers stay within a domain. I think that would be a huge help across the way and could help us in our standardization.
No one wants $1 billion?
I'll take it.
Oh, yeah, and $1
Direct
billion.
contract to the Vision Lab at SLU. We have some follow-up questions actually about the training sort of question for students in the workforce. So the first one comes from Jenny Bloom, who wrote in, something I see in my space, NB/IDL within academia, is an industry need for enterprise level skills, whereas in academia, students need to learn their fundamentals of geospatial, AI, remote sensing, before they can even tackle these enterprise level needs. How would you like to see students trained on these larger needs, which AI can certainly help with, but where training models is perhaps a bit redundant for the bigger picture need of enterprise solutions? So I think trying to get at sort of this gap between like what students are learning and what are the actual needs that you see in your workforce.
Again, this is an academic question that we've been asking about trade schools versus four-year degree. Really what a degree does is it teaches you to learn, right? It opens up your mind so that you're able to learn more quickly. So things that I would want to see, geography classes and computer science classes. It's that simple. And then, you know, a domain of application. When I get my computer scientists, they don't have a domain of application. And I understand why, but if there was any way that we could get the domain to have more of the computer science background and to introduce computer scientists into a domain of interest within their curricula, I think that'd be incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I like it's a little bit of an intractable problem because it's like I would say, well, like if everybody could take computer science courses and then take some business courses, and you know, then we get back to the kind of liberal arts degree. But for us, like if I had to give advice to people in school today, is real world experience is critical. So like we have like a working student in an apprentice program right now that like they bring huge value because they're bringing this amazing GIS expertise to us, and they're able to do all these high level things, but we're really giving them business experience to actually understand what the real world problems are, how they're really being solved today, where the gaps are. So those internships and real world experience in places that are not just in research, I think is critical.
Maybe more questions in the room.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier when you're bringing models from research to operations, that there's some real headaches there. We're in sort of our infancy of research and want to take those things to operations. How would you describe those headaches? What headaches are you feeling? Just as a broad scope question.
Oh, this is one of my major areas of interest. I think fundamentally the biggest challenge is that you have two different languages. Research speaks a different language from operations. In our group in the National Geospatial Program, we have a group that is dedicated. It's called Applied Research, and it's technically speaking dedicated to translating research to operations. So I've had a lot of chance to observe this process. I've also met with NGA, some other areas of USGS, and some other entities on this very process. And it's difficult. If you want that to work, that middle group has to speak both languages. And those are two very technical languages. And what happens in our group often is that operations rules. So the applied research people typically are solving operations problems. So stepping back from that, the way that we've approached solving this problem is you have these three layers, right, of research, applied research and operations. But within that, and we tend to be stratified or layered, but we also have to have these, and I start thinking, oh, they look like silos, but you've got to have direct communication from operations through applied research and to research and then back. And it's that constant feeding back where you're talking to your operational group, whoever that might be, and understanding what their needs are in applying that work. And then making sure that the research group understands that. And that's hard, right? As research scientists, as a research scientist in the USGS, I am evaluated. I go up for tenure basically every 4 to 6 years with my packet of publications. Well, operational work is not always where my goal is, right? I need to publish my research, but there is part of my research I want to become operational. And so it's that continual flow back and forth, operations to research, with hopefully, if you're really, really lucky, a middle group that can speak both those languages. And sometimes that's a different person here and a different person there. And so for each one of those, I need a good word for this because I don't want to say silo. Those processes going back and forth, you might have different people, but you've got to talk the whole way. Because what we found is that if research is over here and operations over here, they both go like that. And we don't want to do that. We want our research, not all research can become operational, but we certainly want some of it to become operational because we sit in an operational center. What?
Sounds like you need product managers.
Oh, boy. I don't even want to go there. Yeah, we do have agile and we do have something like product owners. Something like as much as you can get in a government agency, I think, that is really basically a, waterfall, matrix, agency.
I don't think I could answer it any better than that.
Well, and on that note, I think we're going to wrap up our discussion. There is a wonderful question in the chat about sort of fair practices with AI data, the findable, interoperable, reusable, reproducible, and about the role of open source. And we're not going to have time to get to that, but my understanding is that there is sort of a Google forum that Martin is going to talk about where we will be able to put some of these questions that weren't answered or any of the ones that are in the room that we weren't able to get to. So I am going to hand it back to Rich to then close us out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam, Abby. Whose computer do I have? I have somebody's computer. So now we're going to move into kind of framing the workings of the South. But before that, I want to thank all of our speakers. This was fantastic. It touched on so many topics that have been bubbling up for a while now. The chasm between operations and development, prototyping and research. And education, how do we do rapid education of geospatial experts? How do we marry computer science students with science domains to fill the gap of all of these positions that are open and the need within industry, academia, and government for these roles? Josh Delmonico pointed out that there are 8 billion people that are depending on us. So no pressure there, but I thank every one of you for and our audience for participating today and all of our speakers. So, Henning, next slide. And next slide. Oh, and I want to thank the TGI staff. Lots of people running around. All I'm doing is talking. They're all running around making things happen. And of course, Nadine Alame, our executive director. None of this would be possible without all of TGI and Nadine making this come to pass. So, Central Problem of Our Time by from Jack Dangerman, from Esri, a lack of understanding and a failure to collaborate, challenging our sustainability. So this is, this is to me the core of what TGI is going to be working on, and specifically in the area of GeoAI, what we're going to be working on is bringing the collaborative capabilities together, bringing us all together to work and create that better understanding. So this is what we hope to address. Next slide, please. Interoperability and collaboration is an investment. It takes time and resources, but obviously everybody in the audience here and online is interested in that investment. Next, please. So we have, lots of people are working in this area. Lots of people are working with AI and making advances, but a lot of that is individual. It's individual to an organization. It's individual to maybe standards, specific standards focus. And again, what we're looking to do is bring the variety of people, experiences, capabilities together so that we can address either some of the issues that are bigger, that need that broad experience and capability to address these bigger issues, climate, how do we deal with that big issue, or also to make a more rapid advancement and more rapid impact with AI in the geospatial realm. Next, please. So these are some of the areas we heard about. Some of these today from our speakers: long and short-term generative AI, AI accelerating information from data from usable to useful, the state of AI supporting our federal partners in what they're working towards. They're sitting on just vast amounts of data and services and models, but there's, how much of it is being used, how much of it is useful. And so making sure that what we already have, what we've already gathered, the things that we already have available, that we can take advantage of those and use those more productively as well. Next slide. So research to impact. AI is an integral part of the new science breakthroughs in decision-making, identifying patterns, trends, and anomalies, scalable characterizations, retraining of machine learning. We also heard about provenance and trust. This is a huge area also of, how do we do that? How do we make sure, especially with AI and machine learning and synthetic data, as you're pushing all of this into models, what comes out the other end, and how much do we trust it? Where did the data come from? What changes were made? So this is another big area that we heard from our speakers today about. So these are all kind of the areas that we want to discuss in the working group and come to a point where we identify some areas in which we can maybe fund a project or something so that we can create that advancement and have that impact. Next, please. So today, homework. We have a policy and procedure guidance document for the working group, And we want to have at least 2 chairpersons. So if anybody has an idea who should be chair, please send your nominations to info@taylorgeospatial.org, or actually coming up next will be a QR code that you can use that takes you to the Google forum. And so you can submit your nominees in the April-May GeoAI Working Group meeting. We'll vote on the nominees, pick some chairs, and move out with the work from there. Also in the Google forum are the slides from the presentations that had slides today. We will put the recording from today's session, and all future GeoAI meeting recordings will go up there. So again, this is all public information, so anybody can participate. We do have some specifics about the chairs. The chairs must be a member of the TGI consortium membership, which is one of the 8 research institutes, or a member of one of our partner agencies for like NGA or Planet, something like that. So we need to make sure that we get that done so that we can move forward with the information. You can also email me, Marjorie Cole at Taylor Geospatial, Michael O'Toole, please. I mean, contact us any way you know how to let us know that you're interested in participating and continuing with this work. Next, please. So again, the working group structure, we've got the policies and procedures. Meetings right now are, we're recommending every 2 months, bi-monthly working group meetings, so that things continue to progress. The in-between months will have a webinar. So in April, and right now we have them set up as the first Thursday from 2 to 4 of every month. So next April 4th, we'll have a webinar with Kevin Pomfret he's an attorney, a space and spatial corporate attorney. So he will talk to us about ethics, regulations, law, and space and specifically geospatial work. And then we'll have in May the next GeoAI meeting. So that's the cadence at this point. Once the chairs are voted in and they start to take over and lead the working group, then they will, they and the working group will make the decisions about how they want to manage the cadence of the meetings and when they are. But for now, this is the starting point. So I think it's pretty straightforward, typical working group rules and regulations. And again, all of this is on in the Google forum. Again, the QR code will get you to that forum. And next, please. So what would we like to get out of this working group? I mean, this is also a little bit of homework. So please send us your thoughts on what you'd like to see come out of this working group, and or participate fully in the working group. Come to every meeting and talk to us so that we know what it is. What are the big gap areas? What can this working group do to come together, identify some areas in which some real impact can be made, and work towards a few projects that we can work on. So that's you have your homework assignments now. Send the chair nominations. Next, I think that might be it. Is that my last slide? Yeah. So again, right on time. Thank you all very much. Truly, this was started out as a much smaller thing, and the interest from the community and everybody has been fantastic. And we are truly just looking for the ability to work as a collaborative to make a difference and make some advancements in GeoAI. Thank you again.